awesome. Just awesome.
The man.
He's somewhat of a legend.
Who is this man that students talk about? This man who has become a phenomenon at Webster Thomas High School. This man is none other than Mr. Gregory W. Ahlquist. Ever since he began teaching at Thomas, students have elevated Mr. Ahlquist to an almost godlike status. But there are many students who have never seen the man behind the mat, the true Mr. Ahlquist. The team at Tobacco Review was privileged enough to sit down with Mr. Ahlquist and expose the man behind the mat.
I would suppose that I've always been interested in history much more.
We started off by asking Mr. Ahlquist about experiences in his early life that pushed him to teach.
I had a friend of mine who was kind of one of my church youth group leaders, and he took a real interest in me. He was kind of a steady influence who was willing to kind of listen and care, and I think that made a really big difference. And so it's kind of shaped some of the ways that I view people just in generally, but also in kind of the way that I respond to students.
The Tobacco Review has learned that Mr. Ahlquist has contributed to a published work. Here he gives his thoughts.
It was really important for me because I learned how to do serious research and something that was of a professional scholarly quality. And so that became a really important piece for me.
In response to claims that Mr. Ahlquist is the best teacher ever, we asked this student to give us his thoughts on Mr. Ahlquist.
Ahlquist, he's more than a man. I'd have to say he's somewhat of a legend. I can't really describe him with mere pronouns or adjectives. He's Ahlquist.
Mr. Ahlquist responded by telling us what he thinks makes his students so successful.
When I was a student, I kind of appreciated the teachers that were willing to kind of have high academic standards. And I think that's part of what I've kind of been walking in. Part of that tradition is kind of holding high standards. And so part of my success stems from the fact that I think I frankly believe that students can do it. They want to do it, even though it might be painful for them. I think ultimately there's a reward, and they can even see that in the short term, that there's ultimately something worthwhile to be gained. I like to kind of share some of the places that I've been, things that happen in my family, whether they're whether they're funny stories that my kid does, whether it's her running out of the dentist office after trying to steal, a whole fistful of prizes.
My wife says to my daughter, "Are you going to make a good choice or a bad choice right now? You get one prize." My daughter looks inside the prize box with eyes as big as saucers. Looks in, looks at my wife, takes her hand, reaches into the prize box, grabs the full hand, and screams, "Bad choice!" and runs.
You try to paint pictures and illustrate stories so that it connects to students, so that they can make it memorable and make it meaningful. And so most of the storytelling that I do, I hope, it's a way to connect with students so that they feel like they know me more, but it also is a window and a bridge for them to learn and to absorb deeper information.
Aside from teaching at Webster Thomas, Mr. Ahlquist has dedicated a good portion of his time to combating cancer by playing in the Adam Milne game to raise money to fight leukemia. Mr. Ahlquist gives us his thoughts on his experiences with cancer.
I kind of refused to let bitterness and kind of anger and frustration kind of shape who I was going to be, and instead kind of turn those experiences and really kind of use them to kind of spur compassion, as well as committed to kind of fight those diseases and be determined to kind of do whatever I could, since I didn't have the answers, and I don't think anyone does, to the big why questions about why these things happen. So I chose instead, I think, to rather than ask the why question, to kind of flip it a little bit and say, well, to what end did this happen? And for me, part of that answer is kind of spending and expending whatever resources I have. I'm in this teaching business to see my students succeed. I'm not in this business for awards and rewards. Ultimately, I am here, and the reason I do what I do is for the students. My students are just smart. I am for them. You really can't break it down. All right, you got to hit pause now.